Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from the world of finance and taxation from Connecticut, USA, Divakar Vijayasarathy. Divakar, welcome to the show.
Shitosh, pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me around.
Thank you. Divakar is the creator of Tax as Profit Framework. He's also the founder and CEO of DVS Advisory Group. So, Divakar, my first question, what first inspired you to specialize in international taxation? Was there a defining moment when you realized this taxes could be a wealth creation tool?
This happened because of a personal pain. I was a banker. I was with Citibank, and then I quit and started DVS in 2007. My interest in tax was very simple.
Mm,
I've always felt when I was in employment as well, I used to do the credit appraisal for banks, mortgage credit for Kotak Mahindra and Citibank.
mhm,
So at that time, I saw some of the entrepreneurs being really wealthy, papers not being great.
mm,
Some people work very hard and still not make ends meet. And everyone used to complain about taxes.
mm,
That's why I started teaching tax, just to understand what this subject is about. Because to
mm,
me, at the core, tax was a social contract.
mm,
And why should you have one person of a contracting party always cribbing about, I should pay so much, I don't get this? And that's how I started to get an interest in the subject. And when I started to dig deeper, it became so much more different than a fiscal levy. It became a behavioral science tool. And I was always fascinated by the world of geopolitics and
mm,
politics and tax. It became such an enticing journey beyond. And that's how I
mm.
got into international tax. And yes, life was a very interesting roller coaster, I would say, from there on. So
Amazing, amazing. And how did your 21 years of experience shape tax as a profit framework? And help me understand this framework.
So, before the framework, I'll just give you a quick background. So, it
Sure.
was in year 2008 when uh, we landed on a fairly large contract from a client in Africa. And that contract would have changed our life. We recruited excess people, and that was my second year of being in business.
Hmm.
And then when we raised our first invoice, the client came back and said there is going to be a 30% withholding tax.
Hmm.
That's fine. I was a tax guy. I thought I should see it. I should have seen it coming.
Hmm.
It didn't stop there. And he said, I cannot give you a certificate for deduction
Oh, wow.
because my country does not have that facility. So, which means that if I were to bill $100, 30% would go off and I don't have a proof. And back in India, that amount I would still have to pay for that time. The peak tax rate was
Correct.
40%. I would have had to pay 40%. So it's almost 70% tax on the money. And the misery did not stop there. The client CFO said, since I need to pay you in dollars, foreign currency remittance, a professional payout is a low priority for the central bank. So you will get the money only after 6 months. I
Okay.
was finished.
Hmm.
You just couldn't have you are operating on a 30% net cash out and you don't have the working capital. It literally pushed me closer to nothing at that time. But it also gave me the premise that if this is a problem for me, this will be a problem for literally everyone who's doing international business, or
Hmm.
at least most entrepreneurs. So that's the journey. That's where the journey actually began. And it was, I still remember, it was one Sunday morning. I was reading the history of Arab empires, where the Ottomans in their conquered territory levied a tax called jizya.
Hmm.
And non believers had to pay that. But they gave an exemption
Right.
saying if you send someone from your family to the military, you
Hmm.
don't need to pay jizya.
Okay.
That's when the insight came. Tax was not merely about collection, it was about behavior.
Hmm.
It was a tool which rulers or governments used to align public behavior.
Hmm.
And when you align with what the governments want, you don't need to worry about tax. There is an incentive waiting for you.
Amazing.
That insight literally shifted how I saw taxes from there on. And I've worked in over 40 countries after that, traveled to more than 30, lived in 7 countries. It was all driven by curiosity. This pushed me to bankruptcy 3 times in the past. But what was really fascinating was this pattern was there everywhere in the world.
Hmm.
That's when evolved this promise. It's taken almost 3 years to codify the promise, but we were implementing it all through. We've done this across thousands of clients and entrepreneurs across the world, and it's worked every single time.
How
So,
interesting. How interesting. And this is the psychology of tax that you talk about also.
the psychology of tax is ultimately like there are four levers to this framework, Ashutosh. First is
Hmm.
about understanding the psychology of tax.
Hmm.
Second is about understanding the systems at play, understanding governments. And third is about knowing your true tax cost. And finally, how do you bring it all together, right? How do you
Hmm.
structure taxes like the billionaires? Because the billionaires are not people who make money, they are people who understand systems.
Hmm. Very
I
interesting.
think
Yeah,
once you understand, everything else fall in place, right?
very
I mean,
interesting. Fascinating. Why do you believe most entrepreneurs are stuck in a broken system of taxation?
see, because Ashutosh, let's take a step back, right? Many of the times, my clients come and ask me, like, how do I save taxes? Right? That's simple. I mean, you can take some money, park it in Bahamas, Panama, Cayman, what. My question is, what matters to you? It is not about paying the lowest amount of tax,
Hmm.
paying the right amount of tax, and which is a function of two inputs, right? What you want in life and what you actually do for a living.
Hmm.
So pay the right amount of tax,
Yeah.
keeping these two in mind. I mean, I
Hmm.
might want to pay the lowest. Someone will say, if you're in India, you go live. I've lived in Dubai. You go live in Dubai, you pay 9%. That's perfectly fine. But do I want to live in Dubai? What is my real currency in life? Is my real
Hmm.
currency money or opportunity or peace or mobility? Now, these are questions which people
Very
need to
interesting.
ask.
Yeah.
So the reason why I say people get into a broken tax system is like saying the meaning of money for you and me is exactly the same. It could be
Hmm.
so different. Could
Correct.
be absolutely different, right? So the it all begins from understanding what is your currency of life.
Hmm.
And you should be operating from a market which values your currency as its own currency.
Hmm.
Then you don't need to worry about tax as a cost. Tax has naturally become profit. That's how the premise of tax as profit is.
Amazing. What a great response. Thank you. Divakar, what are some of the common mistakes entrepreneurs make when scaling globally from the perspective of tax?
I mean, this is literally in my wheelhouse, Ashutosh. See, what I generally see, the pattern is, let's say you are an Indian entrepreneur and you are expanding, let's say into the US or UK, the high potential markets. The common challenge people end up doing is, okay, I take money from India, put it in US, or vice versa, which is fine, which is simple, which is fair. Or they start a separate company in US, separate entity in UK. Both will be owned by the promoter. And eventually, at some point in time, 2, 3 years down the line, you will have some cash balance in one country, some cash balance in a third country. You will have an advisor in UK who will say UK is now a 45% tax rate. So many Britishers are moving to Dubai for this. 2 years, 3 years down the line, you will see your money is in multiple places. It's everywhere, eventually being nowhere. Now, that's where we come to the fundamental premise. When you are expanding globally, just answer one question. What is your vision? Now, your vision could be to expand it and tuck it in into your parent, or it
Hmm.
could be to hive off the enterprise abroad independently, or at least have options for both of them to coexist.
Hmm.
Build a build wealth for your family security or de-risk markets. There could be multiple reasons why you are expanding.
Hmm.
It is not that you will expand for one reason, but there must be a ranking of what matters most.
Hmm.
Once you put your priorities marked, then how you should go about becomes very clear. So always begin with the why. Why am I doing this? Is it
Hmm.
out of exploration? Then it's a different story altogether.
Hmm.
Right. So the biggest mistake which entrepreneurs do is if I'm expanding to the US, I call up my friend and say, boss, what are you doing? What have you done? It's a good insight with good intention, but for a very different purpose.
Yeah.
So that's exactly the mistake which entrepreneurs make. They don't articulate why precisely they are going and they need to put the context in place before they actually start the actions.
Well said. Well said. And how can founders protect wealth across borders in today's volatile world? And this is related to the first question also, I assume.
Yes. I mean, it's such a relevant conversation with founders because founders in earlier generations, when I grew, my dad's generation, you would take a lifetime to make your wealth, right? You would retire at 55, 60, you would have bought a home. And probably in my era, that 30, 40 year time frame has become 20, 25 years. And today we're talking about my son is already a co-founder in two ventures at 14.
Mm,
Today you're talking about wealth being created in 5, 6 year time spans. So
mm,
and it's the gestation to create wealth has come down, which also means that the evolution, the mental maturity to deal with prosperity needs to quickly ramp up.
mm,
So one of the most important conversations founders should have is, what is my vision for wealth?
mm.
We see this, I call this as my bulletproof tax and wealth structure. Now, what is that bulletproof structure? It needs to be simple, aligned, and exit efficient.
Yeah.
Any wealth structure which does not fulfill all the three, simple means you must be able to explain it to an 8-year-old kid in 2 years, in 2 minutes.
Mm,
Aligned, it must be aligned with what you want for your life, with what the governments or markets where you put your wealth.
mm,
And most important, exit efficient. We
mm.
all know in Mahabharata, Abhimanyu knew how to get into Chakravyuh. He did not know how to get
Correct.
out. So any tax structure, it needs to be exit efficient, fulfill three situations. Whether you are exiting the venture, succeeding the asset to your next generation, or you want to shut down the system.
Mm,
You should not be spending a fortune in doing any of these three.
mm.
Any structure which is not simple, aligned, or exit efficient, you're just setting up yourself for trouble. If not today, at some time in future.
Great response. My next question, Devakar, is how should entrepreneurs shift from reactive filing to proactive opportunity mapping?
Oh, yes. I mean, this is an area where this is my personal area of passion, Ashutosh. I was at World Economic Forum last year
Mm,
and we got inducted just for this vision in terms of how entrepreneurs need to be more proactive and reactive. Now, the best entrepreneurs of the world, they don't interpret, they don't just stop with interpreting policy, they actually create policy.
mm,
But forget the top 0.1% of entrepreneurs. We're not talking about the Elon Musks or Adanis of the world.
mm,
But at least the lesser mortals like you and me, we don't need to build policy, but we can interpret policy.
mm,
Because at the deepest level, tax is not a rule, it is intent. It's a signal of intent.
mm,
What does the government reward? Where does the government want you to move? And what
mm,
is it that they are willing to support you? It is there in every tax code of the world. Now,
mm,
in the US, people criticize the tax code is 8,000, 10,000 pages, but
mm,
nearly two-thirds of the tax code is about incentives and reductions. If I were an entrepreneur, I would do only two things.
mm,
What is that I really want to do? Let's say I want to build movies. Okay, let's say I'm a creative person. And what is it, which market in the world really wants people like me to operate? You answer these two questions.
mm,
You don't need to worry about tax. You will be flooded with free capital from the government, few bureaucratic support from the entire bureaucracy. Your business is now a shared vision for the entire system.
wow.
Now, that's how entrepreneurs need to look at the game. Because typically you ask I'm part of YPO, EO, and all these entrepreneurial forums. The typical conversation is how I'm lonely, how I need to fight a system.
Mm,
You don't need to fight if you understand, right? Imagine if both of us are playing the same game. You're not against each other. We are all 11 members of the same cricket team. You could be a batsman, but the government
right.
would always be your opening board. That's the game which when entrepreneurs need to look at.
Mm,
And my premise, Ashutosh, is when business goals align with national priorities, taxes become profits.
very true.
And
Very
it's a
true.
game where, and even going back to our own yogic philosophy, right? I mean, the first three chakras are survival chakras. That's where you have your fear coming in. But the moment you look at alignment, you move to the top four, which is the creative energy.
Mm,
And unfortunately, you can not be pressing the accelerator and the brake at the same time. So tax is a creative game. It's not a game of cost or fear. I think
Hmm.
that's the mindset shift which entrepreneurs need to bring in.
Very well said. But therefore, a follow-up question is how can tax policy build trust between governments and entrepreneurs?
See, it's a great question. Now, it begins at two layers. The trust building one is about governments honoring their commitments
Hmm.
consistently. I mean, trust is only from predictability, right?
Hmm.
Predictability of behavior. And second, the important conduit between policy and entrepreneur, which is the professionals. Today, a professional talks about reducing taxes, compliance. How do I come?
Hmm.
That's, I mean, that game is being taken over by AI. Like, I mean, as we speak, I was in the Valley 3 months back, and there were startups whose mantra is to kill CPA firms of the world.
Hmm.
So the compliance game, the filing game, the tactical game is just the days are numbered.
Correct.
Where a professional, a CPA or a chartered accountant or a tax attorney needs to really add value is showcase the entrepreneur, the opportunity which is available.
Hmm.
Look at the possible areas of alignment for prosperity. Because when you align, you don't need to win, you just need to succeed.
Hmm.
Tax has become a game of winning. So when you are winning, someone has to lose. But
Correct.
when you succeed, all of us can win together. I
Yeah.
think that's the mindset which the professionals need to bring to the table and
Hmm.
act as a genuine conduit between the two stakeholders.
Hmm.
Society will progress at large.
Very interesting. Very interesting. What are three key steps to structuring taxes domestically and globally?
So when you look at it, right, let's start off at the macro level and then we get to the micro. If I'm an international entrepreneur,
Hmm.
the core question which I would ask, this is a standard question people come and ask is like, okay, I want to save taxes, right? Or I want to structure my business. I think the first step is to understand what matters to you. Do you want more money, more mobility, more opportunity, or more peace?
Hmm.
Right? I think these are the four quadrants. Invariably, all of us want some of each of these. But moment you start ranking, and that's a function of your age and stage of life.
Yeah.
So what matters most? Rank one, let's say someone says, okay, the guy is only 35, 40 years old. More money is important. Second is more opportunity.
Hmm.
So in which case, the tax structure would be towards housing the venture in a space which is low on tax, but closer to, has good treaty network with a developing market.
Hmm.
Sick example could be, let's say, a Dubai India structure. I could live out of Dubai, pay a lower corporate tax, but I'm closer to India, great treaty,
Hmm.
access to the developing market, so opportunity is taken care.
Hmm.
Someone wants to have more peace, which means the person's, I don't want volatility in currency, I want to have stable contract
Yeah.
enforcement systems, good institution. Look at a developed market. US, UK, Switzerland, all these markets offer you that. So the first step is to knowing what you want. Second is to understand what I call the world by design framework. So, how countries of the world are structured. So, you have source countries, destination countries, conduit countries, and tax havens.
Hmm.
Each of these countries have a predictable pattern of regulation.
Right.
So, sorry, I think I don't know from where the song.
Yeah.
Source and conduit countries have complex regulations, but source countries will have more reliable institutions to back these regulations. Conduit
Hmm.
countries destination countries which are developing, they would still have systems, but yes, India is a classic example. India,
Correct.
Indonesia, any of these markets, right? Conduit markets are simple, homogeneous markets built for financial mobility. They act as lubricants in the game. So
Hmm.
the second step is to understand how global countries and their regulations are.
Hmm.
And the third step is to make your choice.
Right.
You know what you want, you
Hmm.
understand the offerings of the world, and then make your choice, which is an intersection of the step one and two. That's how you do
Fascinating.
a global tax structure. If you're
Fascinating.
doing domestically, it's very similar. Understand, but much more tactical, right? What is it that your government wants? Let's say if I were in India, the government's PLI scheme is a classic indicator, signal on what the government is going to respect.
Hmm.
Today, if I'm doing Earth, if I'm doing AI, I'm doing data center business, anything which protects, right? So I just want to take one layer above. to explain a framework which is called
Mm.
the 3P framework. When you look at taxes, right, the core purpose of taxes for resource mobilization, redistribution of income, that's the common one and two. But the last is about, as we discussed, alignment of public behavior.
Mm.
When you align for a public behavior, three possibilities will come out. Either you are solving for government's paranoia, which is the government's fear and dream,
Yeah.
or you're solving for the government's priority, which is more a status quo need of a government, jobs in a market like India. Or you're solving for something what I call a prohibited sector.
Mm.
Alcohol, tobacco, in US it is cannabis. A prohibited sector, as much as it is publicly despised, it is always protected by the government because these are the sectors which give them resources. So if I were an entrepreneur, I would solve for the local market's paranoia.
Mm.
What is my government's fear or aspiration? That's the first question. Am I doing something to solve for it? That would give you the strategic advantage in any market in the world.
Mm. Very
And
interesting.
you don't need to go to tax regulations,
Yeah.
Ashutosh. Just go to a government's manifesto and you do what they want in that manifesto. 200% sure there will be a reward waiting for you to claim. That's the first step.
Mm.
Second step is you optimize for the constitution. That's a function of whether you're doing a partnership firm
Yeah.
or a private enterprise.
Yeah.
And the third is, of course, your tactical. Am I claiming all my deductions? If there is an accelerated depreciation? So that's the last layer of planning. So first is strategic alignment,
Yeah.
second is structural alignment, constitutional alignment, and third is your tactical alignment. That's
Very
how you do
interesting.
domestic planning.
Very interesting. Divakar, I have time for two more questions for you. How will technology shape the way we manage and optimize taxes?
Uh, if I were to answer this in context, Ashutosh, let's look at it both from a strategic angle and a tactical angle. Technology is going to rule the tactical space.
Mm.
So all your tax planning hacks, the the smaller the first and the second layer of planning, optimizing for structure, optimizing for constitution and tactical optimization, technology is going to take care. Compliance is a given. It's already ruling the roost, and
Yeah.
it's just human intervention is going to come down. But where human beings would still be very, very relevant is
Mm.
critical thinking, synthesizing information, and then I wouldn't use the word trusting your instinct, but deciphering patterns on scale.
Mm.
I think those are the areas where human beings would still be very relevant, and that's how when I see the future of our practice, right, or the industry as a whole,
Mm.
professionals all along have been doing three roles without specifically calling it out. First is any successful professional will be a coach to the client,
Mm.
where he would tell the client what to ask. Second, the professional is also a consultant, where taking that what to ask, he will get the client to understand what to do.
Mm.
And third is the execution part, which is getting it done.
Amazing.
So from the coach to consultant to execution, right? I think the execution will be taken care predominantly by technology with marginal human intervention.
Mm.
Consulting, I would still feel it would be 60-40, 60-40, 60 technology and 40% human intervention. But I believe on the coaching part, which is more psyche, getting to the human element of the
Mm.
game,
Mm.
technology would still only be between 20 and 30 because human beings, we still need at
Correct.
least the next
Correct.
decade, I'm saying. Beyond that, I don't know. But at least for the
Absolutely.
next decade, the coaching
Mm.
component of the game would still be largely controlled by humans.
Very well said. Great response. And my last question for you, Divakar, given the amount of expertise you have in the area of tax, given the number of countries that you have lived in, and given the fact that from a borderless world, we seem to be heading towards high borders all over the world again, where do you see the future of international taxation heading?
I mean, it's fascinating because uh, we can talk for days on this,
I
Ashutosh.
agree.
Uh,
Yes.
let's take a step back, right? We are getting into what is going to change. I mean, how we are going to engage is going to change. From human to human, it's going to
Hmm.
be agent to agent. Now,
Hmm.
when that happens, the number of transactions are going to grow exponentially. This is a common question people ask when is AI going to bring down the cost? No, it's only going to increase the volume of transactions. And and mobility is going to be like available on the tap. You can move. across markets without physically moving yourself. You're
Mm,
already seeing it. Now, what is going to change? And then we can give an endless list, but what is going to stay? I'm more interested on understanding what is going to stay.
mm.
What is going to stay? Tax is going to stay
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's always been there with civilization.
absolutely. Yeah,
Second, trust is here to stay. Whether you do it on a one-on-one or one-to-many, trust is here to stay. And most important, alignment is always there to stay.
correct.
So, right from human body to human civilization. So, I think I wouldn't be too concerned about what is going to change. I'm more concerned about what is here to stay and focus more in terms of staying rooted to those aspects which are going to stay. Because
Amazing.
what is going to change, you only get overwhelmed by the amount of barrage of inputs you get on what all is going to change. But
Mm,
these three elements will forever be remain with mankind, stayed for thousands of years. No reason why it's going to change. The
absolutely. And
semantics will definitely evolve.
correct, correct. And on that note, Devakar, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been with you. Thank you for
Thank you.
talking to me about your own journey. And thank you for giving me such an amazing perspective on taxes, international taxes, and how there is a need for tax planning where human beings will still always be involved.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think, you know, there's a lot more to learn from you. Maybe I'll reach out to you again for another conversation. But
Anytime.
thank you again for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was wonderful engaging with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.